As is the case every spring training, there is a lot of hope and optimism surrounding the Giants. They hope they can finally get back into postseason contention. They hope that first year manager Tony Vitello will be just the spark that this team needs. They hope that some of their free agent signings land, and they hope that some prospects break out. But, everything starts with a little bit of hope. It's just a matter of what happens once they get on the field. So we're going to talk about everything from Vitello to battles at certain positions and some of the signings that the Giants made, including a most recent one involving the outfield. I'm your host, Darius Lott, and this is Second and King. Welcome to Second and King.
Hit right high! It's a deep! It is
Your one-stop shop for everything San Francisco Giants.
Deep right field by Crawford. Adios! Pelota!
And now, here's your host, Darius Lott.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to yet another edition of Second and King. As always, I am your host, Darius Lott, and I appreciate you guys once again for joining me. Spring training is here, y'all. Baseball is right around the corner. We'll start getting spring training games this upcoming weekend. So yeah, guys are in camp. They're getting ready. They're getting loose. Giants have some new faces this time around going into 2026. Guys that they're hopeful can kind of help them build off of what should have been a little bit more of a promising 2025 season. But while the moves they made aren't the flashiest, I still find them to be a bit intriguing. And I look at this team compared to where they were last year, and I do think in some aspects they are definitely better, especially when it comes to defense and things like that, maybe even pitching. But we'll have to wait and see just how that shakes out. Like, after all, this is why you play the games. But overall, the Giants have been in, like I mentioned at the top, this ongoing cycle of just spinning their wheels. And it's becoming increasingly frustrating to not only the fans, but even the players themselves. Logan Webb just recently took, I guess when he was asked by a reporter, he voiced his frustrations about, these last couple of years. He said, and I quote, "I'm tired of finishing around 500. I know the fans are tired of it. None of us are happy about it either. I've been here for the longest now, and it's frustrating." So yeah, you hear it right there. Like, Webby is one of those leaders in this clubhouse and has been for a really long time. And he's if I'm not mistaken, yeah, he is the longest tenured Giant on the current roster. So if he's telling you that, that speaks volumes to where the team is at currently and what they're trying to get out of and stop, going in this hamster wheel of finishing at or below 500. I just have this stat right here pulled up in front of me. 10 MLB teams have finished between 500 and 4 games below 500 in the last 4 years. And 4 of those teams were the San Francisco Giants. Like, that's just, the definition of mediocrity and mid, and they should be better than this. It's not even from a lack of talent. Like, in some aspects, yeah, they're not as talented as some of the other teams in the National League, because the National League is stacked with friggin' just warhorse teams. Like, of course you have the Dodgers, the Mets. I feel strongly that the Braves will have a bounce back year. The Phillies are always in that conversation as well. There are some tough teams in the National League. So coming out of there, even with the added wild cards, it's going to be tough either way, pushing through and getting into the postseason. But we'll see if the Giants have the staff to do it. If they've done enough to put themselves in that category. One of the moves that I didn't get to talk to, I've talked about Luis Ariz, Harrison Bader, all the other moves that the Giants have made, Adrian Hauser, blanking on the guy's name now. Tyler Malley. Sorry, yeah, Tyler Malley. For the rotation, and a couple of like intriguing low, you know, level, good value additions here and there. But just yesterday, as I'm recording this episode, they made another move, that I think is I actually really like this move, honestly, because I think it helps give the Giants added depth in the outfield. They signed outfielder Will Brennan to a major league deal. Has played, majority of his career in Cleveland, played 4 seasons, has a 680 OPS across 4 major league seasons, and only has a 12.7% strikeout rate, which is key because remember, the Giants are trying to get better at putting the ball in play, making contact, not striking out as much. And I think the addition of Brennan definitely helps there. The other thing that's important about this Brennan signing is not only just, a guy who can play the corners fairly well and, doesn't strike out a ton, has good contact skills. It gives the Giants roster flexibility because he is an optionable player, whereas Luis Matos and Gerard Encarnacion are not optionable. So that's big because Will Brennan has 2 option years left. So, they can kind of maneuver the roster around him, if they need him or something like that. If an injury happens, he can kind of fill in that role, whereas you can't really do that anymore with Encarnacion and Matos. They're out of option years. So you potentially are looking at losing one, potentially both of them at some point this year to another team, because if something happens and you need a roster spot or, the Giants to make a trade, you're going to have to, fill that, that void. And typically it's going to be the person you can't exactly, option up or down anymore that gets the short end of the stick. So he gives them an optionable player competing for a 4th outfield role. So that's Brennan, Drew Gilbert, Luis Matos, Gerard Encarnacion. So, it's a logjam of terms of who's competing for that 4th outfield spot. And they can definitely switch and maneuver around a little bit. We'll see how that goes. So that's a big thing in camp this year. Oh, I almost forgot Grant McCray. He could also be a part of that conversation. But Brennan, like I said, he's serviceable, playing in the corners, good contact skills, and serviceable against right-handed pitching. Has a career 720 OPS against right-handed pitching. So yeah, gives them more outfield depth, more roster flexibility, which they didn't have a lot of last year. So I'm actually kind of interested to see how that goes for the Giants. Again, I think it's a low risk move, something that I think can only help the overall roster. And yeah, we'll see where he goes. Got to see a little bit of his highlights. Has a bit of a clutch gene in him. See him come up with a lot of big hits from his time in Cleveland. So yeah, who knows? Maybe they unearth something. Maybe Will Brennan is one of those guys, those little diamonds in the rough you will find occasionally. Speaking of diamonds in the rough, the Giants have potentially 2 competing for another backup role, backup catcher, who are going to back up Patrick Bailey. And one of them they got from the Rule 5 draft, and Daniel Susac. Now, Daniel Susac wasn't selected by the Giants in the Rule 5 draft. He was actually selected by the Minnesota Twins and then subsequently was traded to the Giants. A former first-round pick, he was picked up by the Oakland A's in the first round a couple years ago. They didn't add him. They didn't protect him by adding him to the 40-man roster. They have a lot of catching depth already. Of course, they have Shea Langoliers. He's their primary catcher, one of the faces of their young core that they have out there in Sacramento. And then they have Austin Wynns, I believe, is the backup for them. So he was kind of left in, an interesting spot. They were probably seeing if anyone would take him. He was taken by the Twins, and then the Giants immediately jumped up and snagged him. And He is, as far as he's not going to threaten Bailey with the glove. Like, he's a decent, receiver, very competent, behind the plate and stuff like that. He's not going to unseat Bailey in that regard because, as we know, Bailey is one of the more premier defenders at that position. He is the best overall defensive catcher in baseball. That, is not up for debate. It's just, you're hoping he comes around with the bat at some point, hopefully this season. Whereas Susac, that's where his strength lies in the very hitter-friendly PCL in AAA. He hit 275 with a 349 on base and a 483 slugging percentage. He does have some swing and miss in his game. He had like a near 27% strikeout rate with only not nearing 9% walk rate and then 94 weighted runs created plus. So his zone contact is 83%, which is 55th percentile. Chase rate 37% is 4th percentile. But he elevates the ball consistently. So there's power for him that can be unlocked, like even more power than he's already generating. So that's exciting. If you're the Giants, that's a very good player that you got your hands on. And being a former first rounder, that's one of those pickups you're like, oh, okay, how did he fall to us? That's pretty good. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, 18 home runs so far. That's his best, at the professional level, and we'll see if there's more that can be tapped into. And he's competing this upcoming spring for a backup job, backing up Patrick Bailey, but he's not the only one. As well as Eric Haase, he signed a minor league contract with the Giants. He got an invite to spring training. He is doesn't have quite the same flashy numbers or the excitement that Susac has. He's 31 years old, career 228 hitter, 48 home runs in over 383 games, negative 12 defensive run saves in the majors, and he's also played a little bit of outfield, but we'll see. But he's in camp. We'll see how he does. He again doesn't sound as promising as Susac, but we'll see how that goes going forward. Oh, and if the last name Susac is familiar to any Giants fans, you might remember his older brother Andrew, who was a backup catcher. He actually backed up Buster Posey in 2014, and he has a World Series ring to go along with it. So yeah, I think that's kind of, man, baseball's funny, man, because you have the younger brother of a backup catcher who backed up Buster Posey. Buster Posey is now the president of baseball operations of the Giants, and and now his backup's younger brother is now on the team. It's just only in this game of baseball do you have something like that can happen. So Susac, Haase, as well as Jesus Rodriguez will be competing for the potential to be Patrick Bailey's backup. If there are some fans who still aren't familiar or aware of Jesus Rodriguez, he was one of the pieces involved in the Camilo Doval trade that sent him to the Yankees last trade deadline. That was the same deal where they got Parks Harbor as well. So a pretty, decent return for, Doval, I'd say. The thing that stands out about Rodriguez is he is very prolific in getting contact. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the Giants really sought him out and went after him. And he really, as soon as he joined the Giants organization, he hit the ground running. Over 300 batting average, well over 300 on base percentage, and 400 slugging. So he's somebody who, again, I find very interesting. I believe he's also, did he also play third base? I don't think he'll play third base for us, but he limits swing and miss. He has a plus hit tool and a plus arm, to pair with, him being a former infielder as well. So the Giants made sure that they covered all their bases in terms of backup catcher, because last year it was the often injured Tom Murphy. At one point, they brought in Andrew Kisner. Sam Huff, it was also hanging around too. They brought him in from the Rangers. So we'll see how that battle goes. A lot of opportunity there for one of those guys. I'm kind of keying in more on Susak and Rodriguez to be the driving forces in this battle, for that backup catcher role. And then you have a battle for like a super utility role. So we already know, like, with the addition of Luis Ariz, he is going to be the everyday second baseman for the Giants. He turned down many offers from teams, multi-year offers from teams to come in, and he took the 1-year deal with the Giants because they offered him the ability to play second base, which is his, most comfortable position. It's the one he feels most at home at. So he took the deal with the Giants so he could play second base, and that's what he's going to do. But as we know, and we've talked about, he is a putrid defender at second base. He's a putrid defender everywhere he's played. So Casey Schmidt being on this roster still is huge, because it was thought maybe if they did go after a second baseman, Casey becomes expendable. Well, now he becomes super valuable, probably more than before, because in circumstances where the Giants have leads late in games, you're going to want to put out your best your best defenders out there. And Casey Schmidt definitely falls in that category. So he becomes exponentially more important to the Giants now that they have Luis Ariz. And Casey is a plus defender, well, everywhere, second, short, especially third. He's a wizard at third. There are times where I have to, rub my eyes and realize I'm not watching Chapman out there, because he's had some instances where he's made some Chapman-like plays at third base. And he's also, last year, he filled in at first base a few times as well. So he will be the super utility guy in the infield, and he'll lock things up for that role, I believe. And there's also an opportunity for another super utility spot for this team. And I think that will come down to Christian Koss and Tyler Fitzgerald, who I don't know this or anything, but if I were the Giants, I'm probably leaning more towards Koss, given that he is a much better defender than Fitzgerald is. And I didn't realize this, but he has played some outfield, has Christian Koss. So already he kind of puts himself, in the lead for that position, and he was very valuable for the Giants last year. So again, the Giants are looking at being a lot better defensively. Of course, they have to hang on to these guys like Koss and Schmidt while signing Luis Ariz. So yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but I kind of like how in parts, from a position player standpoint, where this team is at right now. It's definitely looking a little bit better. The lineup looks very intriguing, top to bottom. Just a lot of different hitters, And as I look at this lineup, there's some concerns, like, can Bryce Eldridge, who they've been giving him reps at first base as well as outfield reps to kind of just get him a little bit more versatility, to kind of open up, at bats and opportunities for him, which I don't mind at all. The more opportunities he has to see some big league action, the better. I don't anticipate, or I'm not predicting, like, rookie of the year breakout style year for Bryce Eldridge. I just want him to get the necessary reps possible. And from what little sample size we did see of him, he didn't look overmatched at the big league level. He took some, yeah, he struck out quite a bit. He's still trying to get adjusted to major league pitching, but he walked his fair share as well. So it's not like he was, looking lost or didn't have any earthly idea of what to do. He seemed very comfortable at points, last year when he got called up to the majors. So looking forward to seeing what Bryce can do. We'll see if Bader can replicate close to what he did last year when he was with the Twins and the Phillies. You hope Elliot Ramos can return to that all-star form he had a couple seasons ago. You're hoping you see sustained success from Jung-Hoo Lee. Matt Chapman was, a Silver Slugger finalist at third base. I think the only thing you're hoping for with that, because the defense is there. He's gonna hit. He's not. He's no slouch with the bat. You just hope he still stays healthy. He did miss a fair amount of time with injury. You're hoping Willie can get off to a really a faster start than what he did last year, because it took him quite a while to get adjusted and get going. But by the end of it, he hit 30 home runs, the first Giant since Barry Bonds in 2007 to hit 30 home runs. So you got that, and then you got a guy who has 30 home run power easy with Rafael Devers. Devers might be the only player in this lineup that I look at and I go, oh yeah, because I just talked about, I hope Bailey can find it, I hope Eldridge can find it, I hope Bader can, keep it going and things like that. I don't feel that way with Rafael Devers. It's just he just hits. He's the only person in this lineup I'm not concerned about at all. He's going to do what he does, and he is so good. He raises the potential of this lineup exponentially, and it's been a while since the Giants have had a guy like Devers, in this lineup, and this is going to be a full year of Rafi Devers. They got him last year prior to the deadline. The team just didn't quite, get going the way you would hoped after a massive trade like that. But the team is better than, I think this lineup is better than what they had last year. So I'm hopeful that we'll see some leaps, in terms of the offense, especially with Hunter Mentz, the new hitting coach who came over from the Toronto Blue Jays, and we saw how grindy and just gritty the at-bats from the Blue Jays were as they rode that all the way to the World Series, and it was just, they were so close to winning it. That's how, they take their at-bats so seriously, and it's just excellent approach and everything. So I'm hoping the Giants can kind of capture a little bit of that this year. The rotation, we'll see how it goes. When I look at the rotation, Webby, he's going to do what he does. We'll see if we can get closer to first half 2025 Robbie Ray. He did pitch a lot of innings last year, which may have, resulted in him, wearing down a little bit quicker. So we'll see if they kind of watch his innings a little bit more, especially early in the year. Tyler Mahle, he's a guy who's solid. They just have to make sure he can stay healthy. He's been bit with the injury bug a lot. Adrian Hauser, I think out of all the free agent signings for the rotation, out of the two, Hauser's the one I'm most excited about, because I just like his profile. He's just a guy who eats innings. He attacks the strike zone. And he's recently attributed his success to, getting his velocity up a little bit. I think he sat around 92, 93 prior. Now he's consistently at 94, sometimes even 96. You'll see him get to. Yeah, he's the one I'm really looking forward to. He's a ground ball merchant with this infield defense. Well, part of it. It should be easy for him to get, a lot of those out, especially if they're hitting it on the ground to the left side. As long as they hit it to the left side, it should be fine. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. The rotation is all but locked up. I think what we have here, Webb, Ray, Malley, Hauser, and Landon Roop, that looks like the 5 going into 2026. Where it gets interesting is the bullpen, because there's no clear. I mean, right now you can assume Ryan Walker is back closing games. Eric Miller, Joel Peguero, who they just said he was dealing with some hamstring tightness, so he's gonna be, they're gonna handle him very carefully. Jose Butto, Matt Gage, Spencer Bivens, Sam Henches, JT Brubaker. And then we also have some guys on the IL who could make a return at some point this year. Jason Foley, who they signed in free agency. Randy Rodriguez, of course, he late September, he had to undergo Tommy John surgery. And then Rowan Wick he's more of a look to 2027 type player, because he will not pitch at all in 2026. So, and like I said, he's more geared towards 2027. A healthy ground ball rate. He has a 43.9% ground ball rate for his career. So yeah, we won't even really get too much into him. But yeah, as you look at this, and I talked about it last episode, as you look at this bullpen, it's wide open. There's a lot of opportunity for a lot of guys. And one of the things I think could be interesting is when you look at Eric Miller, Matt Gage, and Sam Henches, the Giants have the ability to really throw out some interesting lefty-on-lefty matchups later in games, especially when you play up against the Dodgers. Of course, they have Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. Those are some big guys to get late. You can give them so many different looks with those 3 guys. So, having 3 lefties in the bullpen isn't always, you don't see it very often, but I think having more than 1 lefty is always good. And I think having 3 could be, it could give the Giants a little bit of an advantage. I'm still not sure. I'm not completely sold on the bullpen. It's still one of the weaker aspects of the team for me personally. I mentioned last episode about, guys like Evan Phillips, Michael Kopech, if they were to go and snag them, what they would, what they could do as far as raising the potential of this Giants team. But we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. I think they really value having competition within. They want these guys competing, trying to push each other for those spots, try to get guys, try to bring out the best in guys, because competition, it does breed success for sure. So we'll see how that goes. And those are names that you see on Fangraphs. There are names I haven't even mentioned, like Carson Wisenhump, Blake Tidwell, Trevor McDonald, Carson Seymour, Hayden Birdsong, Keaton Wynn. There's still some guys who are Tristan Beck, Raver San Martin. There are guys who are in the running who could definitely make some noise this spring. So it's the main race that I think I'm looking at, the competition rather, that I'm looking forward to seeing the most, like who stands out as far as all these arms and who can lock up in those opening day slots. So that's kind of the majority of like the roster and how I'm feeling about it. Also the main thing that we're kind of looking to, and we're hopefully that hopefully goes well, and it's a big one because this is the first year for manager Tony Vitello. Left the college ranks, did an amazing job helping rebuild the Tennessee baseball program out there. Took them to a College World Series championship. So he knows how to win, at this, not at this level per se, but he understands what it takes to win in this game. He also just has a real knack for being a great motivator and just preaching hard work. And I hope that what he brings to the table more than anything is just a bit of flair, a bit of competitive fire to this team that sometimes feels a little lackadaisical. Kind of feel like they're going through the motions and things like that. I just want to see. What I really want is for Tony Vitello to get an opportunity to really put his stamp on this organization, at the big level, with guys like on the come up, like a Bryce Eldridge, a Bo Davidson, just to name a few, like guys who I think with under Tony Vitello, if everything works out and everything shakes out well, could, blossom into the players we all hope they can be, with their potential. So it's hard to say how I feel about Tony Vitello. I like him. I definitely like him. When I was thinking of the candidates, when the Giants were looking at potential replacements for Bob Melvin, he was the one I kind of looked at with, raised eyebrow in terms of like, he could be interesting. He could be a nice get. I wouldn't be mad if the Giants went this direction, because they went with the experienced manager and Bob Melvin. It didn't work. They went all analytics with Gabe Kapler. And I just want them to I want them to take some chances here and there. I don't want them to just feel like they have to play it safe, because playing it safe, and when you're in a division with guys like the Padres and the Dodgers, isn't going to get you very far. You might as well take some big swings, lay your cards out on the table and just let it go, just see where it all lands. So it's going to be a really interesting 2026 season for the Giants. I am very optimistic. I think I generally am optimistic about things when it comes to this team, but I don't know. I feel like looking at the lineup, I'm optimistic. I think there's potential for the rotation to surprise some people. I am still concerned about the bullpen, but I am intrigued about some of the arms that they do have waiting in the wings, guys who have the opportunity to step up and things like that nature. So we'll talk more about the Giants this spring. We'll cover more of the battles at certain positions, and hopefully the Giants can just continue to establish some kind of culture, because that's really the thing that I'm looking at the most. Because going from Farhan Zaidi, having two managers in that span, you're kind of wondering, like, well, what is the identity of this team? Like, they feel kind of directionless, they feel kind of aimless, and you're hoping that they find it. You're hoping that the guys, get together, they pull on the same rope, and they can kind of make some noise, because I don't know how many people are exactly sold on the Giants right now. I think there's a feeling that maybe they could stand to do a little bit more, but we'll see how it goes. There's still time. Will Brennan was just signed, so I don't rule out that there'll be potential for some moves, especially if, the price is right for the Giants. They're not trying to break the bank here, but we shall see how that goes. I look forward to seeing more. I'm just ready for baseball. I am so ready for baseball. We have football season and everything. I am just ready to finally watch Giants baseball again. I'm watching every interview. I'm seeing all the updates on social media. I'm just ready to get back to baseball. It's been too long. So that's gonna do it, I think, for me on this episode. Again, if you liked what you heard today and you're listening on YouTube, make sure you give the video a like, hit the subscribe button. If you want to hear more, hit the notification bell. It lets you know anytime I upload. For my listeners on Apple Podcast and Spotify, go ahead and leave a rating and review. Helps out the channel a little bit more, and it gives me an idea of what I could be doing a little bit better to make these episodes a little more appealing to you guys. So, but I appreciate all of you guys that do tune in and support. Even a little bit goes a long way. I really appreciate you guys. I'm gonna try to be back next week. We'll probably talk about some spring training games, and hopefully we'll finally talk about some prospects. Like I said, Parks Harbor, Bo Davidson have spring invites. They're going to be in camp this year. Not to mention the Giants did it again. They got another top prospect from the international draft. So I'm looking forward to talk about a lot of the prospects in the Giants system. But that's going to do it for this edition of Second and King. I am your host, Darius Lott. And as always, go Giants.